I'm Ollie Chandhok, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
Hi, I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. Today, we have someone who sold a lot. He's never sold out, but he is a part of a lot of people's journey, including mine. Ollie and I met about 5 or 6 years ago when he moved to Dallas from Charlotte, and he brought a very fresh perspective and approach into the world of media. As someone who loves press, especially when it's positive. Actually, I love positive press. I don't love bad press. It was a really unique world to navigate in at the beginning of my career, where you want to make friends with people that are in the media. You want to make sure it's genuine, and there's just never a perfect way to do it. And ironically, I was telling him this morning, I was showing him the worst photo of me ever to be published was the first time I was in the Dallas Business Journal, but I was grateful for it. I met Ollie. We hit it off. We have a lot of things in common. Most importantly, we're girl dads. But he has brought such a presence to the Dallas Business Journal and really to the Business Journal community as a whole that I wanted to share his story. And last thing I'll say before I read a little bit about his background is this is like Barbara Walters getting interviewed. Ollie is always the guy that gets to talk to people like me and share their story. But today the curtain has been unveiled and we're meeting the wizard of the Dallas Business Journal, Oz. So black and white, he's the market president and publisher of the Dallas Business Journal. He did it in Charlotte. He's done it here. They're growing like a weed. But what I like about what the Business Journal does is they share the news with a positive and fun twist, and there's no drama. And I think we need that. And they continue to grow in a world where AI seems to be killing a lot of people, but it's helping them. So with all that being said, Ollie, thanks for being here today. And hopefully I got the bio relatively correct.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Rogers. Great to be here. Happy to join you, and always good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too. Well, give us the story. I know that you're from Canada. You came from the East Coast, and now you're here. But who is Ollie?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Actually, there's a lot to it. I can tell you about the Business Journal stuff. I can tell you about personal stuff. And
do we have to talk about golf?
I don't want to.
Okay,
we can. Yeah,
okay,
we can.
Yeah.
I talk about golf a lot. People ask all the time.
Yeah.
This is maybe all we'll talk about golf. I'm not very good anymore.
Really?
Yeah, it was many, many years ago that I played in college.
Do you have a handicap still?
Yeah, it fluctuates. At the moment it's around a 5.
What is max 20?
I think max is 36 by the USGA, but
listen, okay.
You have to, if you play at any club or any sort of with any regularity, you gotta inflate it a little bit, and I try not to do that. But
okay.
it's a comfortable thing to do.
From a guy that is not good at golf, I suck at golf, and I actually don't really like golf. A 5 is actually I'm a 37. So. But yeah, give us the background. What led us here?
Happy to. So I'll start with my folks, right? So I get asked quite a bit. You can imagine this. I get asked where you're from, and when I say Canada, people look at me funny and say, "Hey, there's no way you're from Canada. You don't sound like it. You don't look like it." And so my background, my parents met in Toronto. My mom from the Philippines, my dad from India.
Wow.
They meet in Toronto. I was born in 75 in Toronto, and just normal upbringing. It was terrific. We moved as I got older, we moved further out into the suburbs of Toronto. I'm still Canadian today, but I picked up golf in high school and started playing competitively, and it sort of took off.
Isn't it always cold in Toronto?
You get 7 months of golf season. You get from April to Halloween pretty much. And by Halloween, it's miserable. But I have played on New Year's Day in Toronto before. Frozen. Yeah. The balls bounce off the green way up into the sky and all that stuff. But it's something that Canadians would do. So I had some scholarship offers. We sort of shopped around. My dad and I toured the Southeast. And I ended up in Charlotte at a school, much like SMU here in Dallas, a small private school, liberal arts, right in a very nice neighborhood in Charlotte called Myers Park. So I went to what was Queens College then. Now it's Queens University at Charlotte.
You get an extra degree?
No, I wish. I wish they tacked something on.
Yeah, no joke.
It was awesome, honestly. And what's really interesting, so I went back there recently and got to know the new president, Dan Lugo. What he said to me was, "Hey, Ollie, you live in Dallas. We have alumni everywhere, but specifically in Dallas, he has an interest in sort of modeling Queens after SMU. So he is planning on visiting and meeting the dean and all of those sort of things, which is sort of side note, but super interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I ended up in Charlotte, and after college, I tried to do the golf pro thing. it's way worse than it sounds. It's not easy to do. If you can't compete and play golf for a living, I didn't necessarily want to be a club pro, right? So I tried it for 6 months, did not do very well, and got out of it very quickly and started selling. So my college roommate,
without selling out,
without selling out, absolutely, right? So actually, I did sell out. I sold out the golf career, right?
Oh, true.
Yeah. So my roommate was on the golf team. He immediately went into industrial sales, selling chemicals to manufacturing facilities, places like that. And his boss was in our apartment all the time and said, "Hey, Ollie," his boss, who at the time was probably 30 years old, right? Says, "Ollie,
super old.
You got to get a real gig, right? You got to quit this golf pro effort that you're trying to make." And so I signed up, worked for him for 4 or 5 years, and sold industrial supply across the Southeast.
Is that fun?
It was horrible, honestly. Now, it was hard. You can ask my wife; she knows how horrible it was, but I learned to sell. I mean, like if you think about it, I'm selling consumables, so drill bits and welding rod, and those sort of things, to somebody that is lying under the frame of a truck or working on some sort of machinery, right? So it's the most difficult type of selling you could do.
Did you wear a blazer to sell?
No, there was no blazers. It was golf shirt and khakis. That was the team uniform. So it was tough. And what I learned, nowadays we sit in front of CMOs and CEOs and have comfortable conversations in a boardroom. A lot easier selling environment than that industrial world. For some reason, I keep thinking the movie Tommy Boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Was that kind of you?
Oh yeah, totally. Callahan Auto Parts.
Yeah, Callahan Auto Parts. Yeah,
it was something like that. Yeah,
man. But what led you to this again? And we were talking earlier. It's funny. Like I never thought I would. I have dyslexia, ADHD. I was never good in school, but in college, I figured out I love writing.
Yeah.
And I feel like my brain works differently if it's on a keypad or keyboard or a pen. But did you eventually fall in love with like the world of journalism? I mean, there obviously had to be some path to get you to the business journal.
So that's, I am not a journalist by trade, right? So I sort of learned the selling skill and operations. And what happened was I met the publisher of the Charlotte Business Journal. Her name was Jeannie Faulkner. Jeannie has since, very quickly after I got there, retired 6 months after my arrival. And so she had a concept to grow our audience. And the concept was to share, back in those, this is 2008. Back in those days, it was heavily print, right? Like we barely had a website. And we went around to various organizations and chambers and community groups and showed people how to use the Business Journal content to build their business. In other words, finding sales leads, just general community information, I guess is the best way to say it. And so I would 5 days a week was doing workshops, seminars, presentations to groups of anywhere from 10 to 1,000 people. In fact, I was actually a regular on, I think it was Allen Tate, a real estate agency in the Charlotte area. Yeah. I was on their regular training schedule to do, once a month or so, I'd show up and do a little hour seminar on how to find sales leads in the Business Journal. And so this concept took off and it became something that the business journals did nationwide.
Is that what's in the back?
Like so you got the lead section, but some of the articles themselves, the stories themselves yield better contacts, right? And so we were showing folks how to apply that content and grow your business. You can still do it today on the website and those sort of things, right?
Which organically led them back to the Business Journal.
Yeah, and so we grew the audience. There was a point in time there where we were bringing on more subscribers and readers than the website was, right? And so this thing became a nationwide thing. So to sum it all up, I was an audience development guy. I'm not a journalist by trade. I'm not an advertising professional. There's this little segment in the middle called audience development, and it's about the people. It's about marketing. It's about telling our story. And so that's where I grew up, and I did it for 7 or 8 years in Charlotte. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was the ultimate goal once you kind of fell in love with that space, right? It's not what you do, it's how you do it. What was the ultimate goal?
That's a great question, Rogers. The goal personally for me was to become a publisher of one of the business journals one day. And the reason being not necessarily for status or any sort of, it certainly wasn't for compensation. It was about the challenge, right? Like running an organization, learning both sides of the house. Our world's unique in that I get to be a part of a news organization, content, community, those sort of things. But then on the other side of our house, I'm running a business essentially, right? I'm running a sales team. I'm running operations group events, those sort of things. So every day, this is cliche, but every day is different.
Oh.
Got a little bit of everything. And I saw that in a guy I consider my mentor. He was the publisher in Charlotte after Genie. He is also since retired.
Huh.
But I envied him. I envied what he got to do every day. And so I sort of had this target of, I gotta do everything really well to get to a place where our organization says we want Ollie to run one of the business journals. And so in 2015, I was promoted to run the Triad Business Journal in Greensboro, North Carolina, and was there 3 years and have been here for almost 6 now.
Wow. So let me call a timeout so all my friends with ADHD can understand this. So maybe draw a parallel with the world of the business journal and publishing, where maybe in movies, right? There's the writer, there's the director, there's the producer, there's the actor, there's the editors. How can we best understand your world in parallel caveman terms?
So I guess I would be the executive producer of a film, right? So there is I have one foot in the finances, the business operation of the program, and then on the other side, I don't directly have contact with stories or articles, but our editor in chief will report to me, and every now and then he'll look for insight on my sort of take on what we're doing, our themes, our general coverage angles, industries that we cover, sort of those things. So really, I'm sort of in the business community, running a business operation, but also have a hand in our news and the actual content that we produce every single day. So it's interesting. It's different every day.
Maybe about the other roles too. Give us insight as to, so the publisher, you're the orchestrator, and you're the, at the end of the day, it kind of falls on you, but you have different departments for different sectors of business. I mean, how does that all work behind the scenes?
No, that's a great question. So,
by the way, we didn't go over any of these questions. This is just, it's just that funny how a lot of the titles are similar in different industries, but like audience engagement is essentially outside sales,
right?
And publisher essentially is, you're the executive in charge, you're the chief, but maybe the other positions with the business journal as well. It'd be interesting to learn how that kind of filters out.
Totally. Yeah. It's an easy translation is if you think of one of the big banks, right? They all have a market president. So I would be essentially the market president. And then
for Dallas.
Yes. We're part of a large organization, American City Business Journals, and we're in 44 cities across the country.
Yeah.
So we're a big group. Now my role is specifically Dallas, Fort Worth, or North Texas, if you want to call it that. Now I really only have 4 direct reports. So I have the editor in chief, who has the biggest team. Editor in chief it's 11 or 12 combination of editors and reporters covering various things, their own beats, their own geographies. And so editor in chief, and then I also have an events director who puts on those big programs that we do every year. You're familiar with the 40 Under 40 awards. The Women in Business Awards. Those are content-driven programs. And then third, I have essentially a VP of sales, and the VP of sales manages a team of advertising reps, which they're generating our revenue. They're keeping the business afloat and growing the money side of the house. And so my fourth person is sort of the office person that manages all the day-to-day stuff and keeps the train on the tracks. I don't want to say buys the snacks, but she does way more than that. But sort of those.
Shout out to the snack person.
I mean, it's really important, right?
MVP. Yeah, we need snacks. So you live and die by kind of other industries, and you obviously are agnostic, whether it's Dallas, it's a real estate city, it's an oil and gas city, it's a finance city, it's a little bit of everything. But trying to run a media company as well, given again, AI is here, right? It happens yesterday, but how do you run your business while other people are running theirs, knowing that you have to have access to their business to run yours, staying ahead of the game, right? I'm not wording this question properly. I guess my question is, how are you guys dealing with all the changes in the workplace right now that maybe AI is a part of it, maybe it's a generational thing as well, but what kind of effect does that have on y'all?
Yeah, I mean, so just behind the scenes, we do employ AI for various things, and I'm not as close to it as I'd like to be in terms of the back office stuff. But I'll give you an example. So we send out the email, the Ollie Chandhok email that comes out every day at 8:30 and 3:30. It's just a news email that keeps you informed, right? There was a point in time there, it's been probably 6 months ago or so, where we were using AI tools to rank the email, meaning
to rank it,
meaning the articles that you saw on your email that you got, Rogers. If you are very focused on residential real estate, the top 2 stories on that email that you got would be residential real estate focused.
No way.
And mine might look a little different. Mine might be focused on healthcare or transportation, whatever other industry that I'm leaning on. So the goal there was to drive more traffic and views and visits and those sort of things, and subscribers, right? Because it's paywall. Now what happened was we pulled away from that because it wasn't as effective as we thought. So today, our emails are the same. What you get and what I get is the same, and a human is ranking it. So Will, our editor, is deciding what we all see in that order.
To the same person.
To that order. Yeah. And so I think the goal is at some point, as behind the scenes, we call it the robot. As the robot gets smarter, we'll likely go back to having AI rank those emails. That's just one example of it.
It's funny too. I read the emails, like everyone else.
I'm glad you do. Yeah.
Yeah, but for real. But it's funny because the title, the subject, again, my P brain is like if it's breaking news, or not breaking news, but essentially the heaviest story is not the leading story.
Right.
And I'm sure y'all do that knowing that people are going to scroll down. And I'm sure there's a math to, how long you want them on the email, knowing they're going to click and then hopefully become a subscriber.
You're dialed in, man. Yeah. That typically for
real. Even this morning, the subject line is never the lead story.
It's the fourth thing. Yeah. So it drags you into the content, right?
So this is something you had to mastermind to figure out.
It wasn't me, but yeah, it was somebody.
But there's psychology behind it.
There's psychology behind it for sure. Yeah. And one of the things you'll notice too, as you dig into those, increasingly our clients who are essentially thought leaders, right? They're providing content. So you'll see in the third or fourth or fifth spot, a lot of the times, something from our clients. So these are paid positions, but it's very well received by our audience. It's a very sophisticated audience.
Meaning they're paying for like an op-ed?
Yeah. So if you wrote something about residential real estate, which you're pretty good at, right? Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
So you craft an article about residential real estate or the state of the market at the moment. What you write is going to be way more effective than one of my reporters, right? And so our audience realizes that, and that traffic that you gather is much more significant than one of my reporters because you just know it better. Huh. So we lean on sponsored content, even though it's paid. It does very well on our site. So you'll see as you look through those emails, you'll start noticing sponsored content by the experts who are the people that are working in those particular industries at the moment.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
If this is taboo, then tell me to shut up. But talk a little bit. I'm not, and I feel like maybe it's because you and I are on the other side of, we're not too old, but we're we're a little bit set. I'm set in my ways. Well, but I'm like AI. I mean, what's the I think I got a little bit more familiar with it when the Hollywood strike was happening. I was like, I don't get this. And then I realized it was a combination of paid extras meets screenwriters, et cetera. So how do you guys work alongside a chat GPT? How do y'all do that? Even, and maybe this is speaking on behalf of the journalists, but how do y'all?
That's a, it's a mystery to us still.
Yeah.
Our journalists, our newsrooms steer clear of, they're not allowed to use ChatGPT or any sort of generative AI. I know of some of my peers that have used it, and I've dabbled into this just to sort of craft some questions for discussions and panels and those sort of things, but nothing goes through something like that gets public. Like we would never publish anything that had an AI touch on it. So yeah, we just don't know what to do with it yet. I think it's too early to tell in terms of journalism, how to apply that. But we've had very direct orders from the big, our editorial leaders that you don't touch it. You don't use it for content.
You think eventually it's going to be something that just is weaved into our day to day?
Too soon to tell.
Yeah.
I hate to opine on it, and I'm not necessarily sure. It's a tough conversation because like it is for many industries, right? It's just something that is sort of unknown at the moment. But yeah, in terms of platforms, we can apply that stuff, but content, we haven't touched it.
Okay.
Yeah. So not taboo at all. But
no, there's just a lot of shakeup going on in the world in general, in business in general, real estate. My initial background, there's a ton of stuff going on, and I have to force myself to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, my dad, like 4 or 5 months ago I was at lunch with him. He's like on chat. I was like, what the hell? You're on. I didn't even have it. And we went to this thing last week at SMU where it was a very impressive speaker. Like he went to Stanford undergrad, just a very sharp guy, gave this really impressive presentation. I actually paid attention at the end. He goes, by the way, I made this I have to admit to y'all, I made this last night on chat. I was like, I felt so cheated.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. But again, I don't know the guy personally, and there's whatever. Eventually it's going to have to be integrated into our life. Right. But I think that the beauty of again, me writing an article about real estate, there's a different tone versus a robot doing it or a reporter doing it.
Sure.
Right. Because it's spoken from experience. So there's got to be a way to bring intimacy to it. And I think that's what will happen over the course of time.
I agree. I think we'll all sort of learn how to use it effectively, but also put our voice on it or keep our voice on it. I referenced the questions, panel questions, and those sort of things. When I'll get in there and ask AI to give me 10 questions or something, what spits out is terrific. But I go through it obviously and tweak it and put it in my own spirit, my own language, and it helps. But you still have to apply your intellect to it, right?
Well, also your tone. And I think, real estate, speaking about on the residential side, there's always been companies that try to disrupt it and make it so transactional. But at the end of the day, like a relationship is going to always be paramount to a computer. And that's it. A computer doesn't have feelings. They don't understand you. And I think that I'll always speak to that, but there's got to be ways to bring it into your day to day. If not, you get crushed. And it's like when the internet came out or social media came out, you cannot fight it. You can't. And I feel like we are unfortunately a part of a very lazy and entitled generation, and it's only getting worse. And so you've got to find a way to lever it to your advantage.
You nailed it. I mean, no matter what we do, we're still a people business.
Yeah.
We always will be.
Yeah.
Without our readership, without our audience, we have nothing, right? And so that part of it, I'm with you. We've talked about this offline, but the relationship is the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we can improve our platforms. We can generate great events and programs. It doesn't happen without the people that show up.
Yeah.
None of it. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, like you come from Charlotte, then North Carolina, and then Dallas. This is it's got a pulse. It's got a soul. So talk to me about Dallas. We were talking about Dale Petrosky before we started, and Dale is such just an icon. And I had Jack Gosnell on this a few years ago, who's been a part of all the urban development. But coming from Toronto, which I've never been to, but in my mind, Toronto is kind of what Dallas wants to be, architecturally and diversity wise. All this diversification, et cetera. In 6 years of being here, right? The last 6 years in Dallas, Texas, have probably been the most epic 6 years of any city, maybe ever in our country.
Absolute rocket ship.
Literally. Yeah. And we're just getting started. And I'm sure that was part of your family's plan to move here. But what have you seen? And I'm going to lead with a question that I asked Dale when he came and spoke to our real estate company about a year ago. I'm sure you know this, but you know what the number one source of income and jobs are in DFW? If you had to pick a field, a market, I'm saying like an industry.
I think you
did I tell you this?
I think you did. Aviation and aerospace?
Which I was like, what? I just initially would think just the basic law, real estate, oil and gas.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy, right? Because none of that happens in our backyard here. But then there's literally cities, there's Alliance, there's cities dedicated to aerospace. But so talk to us about the growth and what you've seen just as a fan, right? Knowing that if you had to describe Dallas to one of your friends in Toronto or North Carolina, how would you go and pitch it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the fact that aerospace is the leading employer it speaks to the diversity of industry here. I mean, the fact that, our initial thought would be real estate or consumer goods or something like that, healthcare. It's just a massive diverse group of industries that are all thriving, right? And so to go back to Toronto, I was talking to somebody. I had a lunch. This is last week, and I compared Toronto to Dallas culturally, right? And they thought I was crazy. But if you think about
you said to someone in Toronto or
no, somebody here. So I was having lunch at it was a World Affairs Council lunch and sitting with a few peers, and we just got to just met, and they were curious about me being from Toronto, and I said, Dallas has been really, really easy to adjust. Number one, I'm a huge fan, right? Like it's so welcoming. Everybody's friendly. If we can do business together, it happens. Toronto is similar to Dallas. People are gonna think I'm crazy, but culturally, and which sounds really weird because you're thinking of a northern Canadian city, and then you're thinking sort of a southwestern powerhouse.
The people that think you're crazy are the ones that are from here.
Right.
But I'm serious.
Yeah,
It's because it was such a vanilla cookie cutter town. And not necessarily just the last 6 years, but really up until 10 or 15 years ago, there was no diversity here.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying like with people, I'm saying culturally.
Sure.
Right. And then you start to see these, like, it was very intentional when they started to actually put, gasoline on the fire with a cultural district, a design district, an arts district, and all these things that have just happened.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to take away from North Carolina, or, I lived in Charlotte and Greensboro, great towns, also on the up and up. But I arrive here and you're sort of surprised at the diversity of people, number one, diversity of industry. There's a bit of flash. And a lot of that is how I compare Toronto.
Dallas,
right?
you're saying?
Just a bit of flash.
It's Beverly Hills without,
Right.
Yeah.
We like the nice cars and the good clothes and that sort of thing. And Toronto is very much like that. Toronto is challenged with a border, right? Lake Ontario sits below Toronto, where here in Dallas, like, you and I have talked about this, you can grow in all directions and there's opportunity everywhere. And it's happening, right? Like we at the Business Journal, we write about Alliance, Texas. We write about Collin County. We cover South Dallas, right? There's Southern Dallas. There's a whole slew of opportunity for developers, for real estate, for business. The growth is just sort of unstoppable. And, I think Dale actually says this, we are in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And it's exciting.
Unlike,
it's awesome.
Again, unlike any other city, maybe ever.
Yeah.
So here's a loaded question. What are we missing here? What do we need in Dallas Fort Worth? And I'm saying,
that's
like,
a tough one. Yeah.
From an industry perspective, I'm not saying, I do think the city struggles with accepting diversity and growth. And, Dallas, again, like, it's a hard sell. I think it's in a great way, right? It's like you would never come here. Today is Wednesday. You would never visit Dallas on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
You go to New York City, you can go to Vegas, New Orleans, Miami, Chicago, LA, any of those cities, there's stuff to do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what makes it hard. But at the same time, that's what makes it an easy pitch to move here. Right. It's centrally located. The city is relatively calm. It's affordable, but there's not a whole lot of, activities.
Yeah.
So with that said, with what we have control over, we're never going to have mountains or a beach.
No, that's not happening.
What do we need here?
So I think I'm going to answer that in a outside Dallas way, right? So I'll tell you a story. So my father-in-law is from South Carolina, really he lived in Atlanta for some time, but most of his life has been in South Carolina, right? Almost retired. When we moved here 5 years ago, and still to this day, he says, "Hey, have you got your cowboy hat and boots yet?" Right?
Yeah.
And I think about it. And I'm like, well, I see a lot more Teslas and like custom suits, right? And Dallas specifically. And I'm thinking there's sort of a perception problem, right? Like even my peers across the country, when I tell them, my peers, publishers in other cities, they still have that perception of Dallas. And it's certainly not something we want to let go of. It's heritage, it's classic, it's the state of Texas, right? But I think outsiders don't realize how cosmopolitan this place is, how much opportunity there is here, and how diverse it is, right? And so when they do get here, my brother actually visited from Toronto, loves it. Didn't ask him to, but he's planning on coming back, right? I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. I want him to come back.
Why are you coming back?
But so here's a good example. I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina for 3.5 years. He did not visit me a single time in Greensboro, North Carolina. He comes to Dallas last year and he says, hey, and he is a downtown Toronto guy, right? Custom suits, all the flashy stuff. Comes to Dallas and says, hey, when we're coming back in June. So he'll be here 2 months.
What time of year did he come the first time?
It was too hot. He came in July, but that was the only challenge.
I was like, get him to come in October.
Yeah, Canadian guys coming here in July.
Wow.
That said, I think there is an opportunity for us to improve our perception outside of our borders and get people here. I mean, physically here. He got here and said, this is amazing. I want to come back. It'll be his second visit in less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So same topic of conversation. What's your biggest surprise about Dallas?
Honestly, it's the ethnic diversity.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see it everywhere. So I live a little further north. I live in Collin County up in Frisco. It's about as diverse as it can get. And Toronto is praised as one of the cities that will likely have no majority before any other place in the world, right?
Wait, explain that to me. You're saying there's not like one dominant.
There's not one dominant ethnicity or race that sort of leads the percentages, right? That's what they say up there, and I don't know how to, like, you got to dig into the census or something to get into that. But down here, it feels the same way. I mean, it actually does, and it I don't think that's necessarily the perception. It's a surprise when you arrive.
But again, Dallas, it's home. We're always going to live here. It's such a convenient city. where there's just bubbles, right? What people don't realize though is there's now multiple bubbles. And what happens when a Toyota moves here, it creates its own bubble. And what happens when Ericsson moves here, it's like it's happening. And again, there's no need for someone that lives in Frisco to drive to Mansfield. There's no need for someone in Mansfield to go see University Park. But it's changing and it's bringing in a different audience, which I think again Dallas really needed it. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. These northern communities way up there, close to Oklahoma, Sherman, Anna, those folks, they're employment centers now, right? Like TI's putting up a big plant in Sherman. You can live in Anna or McKinney and never actually come south to Dallas, and you have sort of this other central business district. Or you go to Toyota in Plano, and you never venture south. So you can live in Anna and work in Plano, and it's this whole other city. So it's unbelievable.
We're on an airplane, and you and I, and there's someone sitting next to us that has never been to Dallas. Sell Dallas to them. How would you go and describe it in 2 minutes? What would you say based off of your 6-year experience here?
It would be about opportunity, number one, where, hey, regardless of what you do, you can find it in Dallas. And I hate to sound like a commercial, but that's absolutely right. I mean, regardless of what you do. So my wife worked in the home building industry, right? In Greensboro, she stayed at home because there just wasn't that much opportunity in terms of home building. We arrive, she applies for 2 gigs and gets both jobs and picks which one she wanted to go to.
Wow.
So just sheer opportunity in a single random industry there. I'm sure if you're talking technology or healthcare, the reception is sort of the same, right? And so I think there's obviously that, and you can come here cold without a job and have a job in a month, right? So opportunity is big, but on the flip side, there's not necessarily this arrogance or sort of like you go to some cities where it's sort of what high school did you go to or where'd you grow up, right?
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you came from or what you did. People welcome you in.
Yeah.
Obviously you got to be a kind person, but that I think is a different feeling than you get in most places. And I think part of that is literally the folks are all transplant, not all, but a lot of transplants, people coming from different places. And so
without the desire to stay, and then they stay.
You're exactly right.
Like a lot of people where I went to high school and college, a lot of people would move to Chicago, LA, knowing they're coming back home to Dallas.
Yeah.
But then there's people here. It's like, I don't know. I stayed.
Absolutely.
It becomes home.
Yeah. This is home. I don't plan on ever leaving. I mean, this is it. And it wasn't that way in my previous stop. Not to take away from Greensboro. It was a great place.
There was a plan.
But there was a plan to move on to something grander, and part of it was opportunity. And here we are, right? So it's not, there is no plan or designs to leave Dallas anytime soon.
Good for you. Describe Dallas in one word.
Man.
Opportunistic, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of going there, but I would say it has to do with opportunity. Most of the things that we've touched on already. I think there's, you know what word I'm going to go to? It's this swagger feeling, right? Like again, it's not arrogance. It's more about pride, and validated pride, right? Like we should be proud of what's going on here.
That's good.
And it's the folks that made it happen are all still part of it. They're not leaving.
Swagger.
So a little bit of swagger is probably the right word.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you're like a sponge or a DJ for every successful or unsuccessful business and leader in Dallas. You get to give somebody one piece of advice in the world of business. What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the piece of advice is to build your network. It's about the people. It's to, and I've said this before, I use the word insulate, right? So you insulate yourself with your network. That's the only way that I've thrived in my career. It's all the people that I surround myself with. That doesn't necessarily mean you're asking for favors all the time. You're just building a network of people that insulate you for opportunity, right? So if you have 1,000 people that you know really well, or 100 that are really, really close to you, somewhere in that group of 100, you can accomplish something, you can achieve something together, right? But if you don't have the 100, you got nothing. You can't even start. So I think I really feel strongly that you insulate yourself with people that are thoughtful, that are sort of in your community, whatever community that is. And it just leads to bigger results and bigger opportunity.
So what if somebody listening and watching doesn't have your personality and your figured out approach? What's the first step to building a network of people that are going to support you?
You got to go outside.
Yeah.
This is,
what if they don't play golf?
Right. Yeah. And if you don't play golf, then you have no chance, right? Actually, you do.
Yeah. You have so much more time if you don't play golf.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. It concerns me how much, and I get it. I spend a lot of time on a screen. It concerns me how little contact they have. And I've read a lot about this stuff. Back in our day, where your friends are because of the bicycles in front of the house.
Yeah.
Now everything's digital, right? Which is, it's functional. It makes things more efficient, but it also sucks because you don't actually interact with people face to face. And it seems as we get further along in these generations, they get more and more shielded by the screen. They're sort of missing out. Yeah.
But again, it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know why I've referenced this maybe a few times even on the podcast, but randomly, the very first time, and maybe the only time I ever watched the Ellen Show back in the day, Amy Poehler was a guest who was like a Saturday Night Live alum, and she was married to Will Forte.
She's hilarious. Yeah.
But it was like a real interview, and she was a new mom at the time. And I remember Ellen asking her, like, what scares you about being a parent? And she's like, well, everyone knows about an iPhone or an iWatch, whatever. And she's like, and this was like 8 or 9 years ago. She was like, I'm so afraid that my children are going to be so in tune with like something in front of them, they're going to lose the art of eye contact.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I was like, I'll never forget it. I was in Arizona randomly watching it by myself. And I was like, that is so scary for children. And as a relatively new dad, it's just, that the stuff that comes second nature to you and me.
Right.
There's people that will never have the reps to become successful. So hopefully, they'll take your advice. Last question regarding the business world that you're in. You get to look back in 50 years and think about your legacy and all the stuff that you're able to do. What are you most proud of?
Man, business specific, right? I'm certainly most proud of my family and kids, and of course, right? It's more about a feeling, right? Like for me, and I get sort of chided for this sometimes. I want people to feel good. I want people to think back and think, hey, what Ollie did in the community when they think of me and things that we did at the Business Journal, it was all positive. It was all upbeat. Now we live in the world of journalism, right? So like you said early on, good and bad press, we cover them both. But in terms of connections and I guess like events and programs and those sort of things, I want people to think back and think, man, they did some good stuff for our community. They helped further this opportunity and this trajectory we're on by making those connections, right? So the legacy is more of, you want to be remembered for having an impact in a positive way and making people and businesses succeed. That's big for us at the DBJ.
Well, the world needs that just across the board.
Yeah,
that approach, unfortunately, is not that common. But your impact is literally widely felt. So as a fan, thank you. And then the last question, how do we best support you from a professional standpoint?
Read the Business Journal. Yeah, it's pretty easy to do. You can find us. It's dallasbusinessjournal.com, about as easy as it gets. That always helps. Like we said earlier, people and audience is the most important thing we've got.
Whether it's 10 people or 1,000, Callahan Auto Parts is here to help you.
Can you say the line, the Tommy Boy line?
I can sell a piece of what was it? I know. Trust me, I'm in my
butcher,
head. Yeah. You can pull your head out of a butcher's ass or something. And no, Tommy, he's like, I'd like to place an order. What? You would?
Not even going to try.
Yeah. Some of y'all watching this might not even know what Tommy Boy is. And if that's the case, shame on you. Fat guy in little coat.
Yeah.
One of the defining moment of our childhood. So, okay. So, and to subscribe to your emails as well, how do we do that?
DallasBizUpdate.com, BIZ, and plug your name in. You'll start getting it. It keeps you informed, keeps you in the loop. You should be.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being a friend and for sharing your story. It's fascinating. And just on behalf of the entire city, thanks for what you do and for sharing the stories and for doing it in a respectful tone, even when it's not always great news.
You got it. Appreciate you, Rogers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Awesome.